Chapter 7. We go back in time 20 years back to find three groups of friends, 15-year-old George and 16-year-old Daina and Esther. They were within a facility that was made in the making and training of Earth's heroes. We then come to see Daina, looking around. Well, since I'm here, I guess I should get to making some friends, with her eyes landing on a familiar face. Wait, is that? Yo, Esther, she calls out, with Esther looking in the direction of the voice to see Daina running at her. These two had been friends for as long as they can remember, for they went to the same boarding school, and now they meet once again. Isn't this a wonderful surprise? With her hugging Esther. Esther, hugging her back. Good to see you too, Daina. At least things won't be boring around here. With you around, she says as they release from the hug. Daina. For real? But I did hear there is a special student joining with us this year. Esther. The kid brought up by Commander John. I hear he got no powers, though, Daina. Yeah, that's the one, but if he is recommended by Commander General John for this, they must be promising. I think his name is Boy George. A voice interrupts the two girls. Nice to meet you two. You must be Daina and you must be Esther. He greets them. Daina, looking at the boy in front of them. Weren't you taught? Disturbing someone else's conversation is rude. George, apologies, I just couldn't help but overhear two beautiful girls talking about me. Imagine my surprise on seeing it was you two, he says with the girls looking at each with a smile. Esther and Daina, two prodigies of our time, both of you finished our school at the top of our classes, not just our classes, but all of them. He expresses disbelief. Esther, interesting. Most PPL who see me and Daina always run, too intimidated to approach us. George. Well, I'm not most PPL, he says with confidence. Esther smiles at him. Esther. I like this one. You seem fun to be around. And that is how the three first met. We then go forward 2 years. At this time, all three of them had surpassed everyone's expectations, for no one else could stop this dynamic trio. For the training that was supposed to take 10 years for them to finish, they had cleared all of it in just 2. Having cleared all quizzes and obstacles thrown their way, even the instructors and teachers saw this potential, George being their tactician with Daina and Esther as the muscle. These three were simply unstoppable, and they were deemed worthy to go on missions by themselves. They agreed to hold a party to celebrate, and that night Esther came over to George with the intention of confessing to him. But George turned her down, for he simply saw Esther as a friend. Nothing more and nothing less. Esther didn't take the news all too well, for she stormed off in a silent fit. And this was when the events that led to the conceiving of Fidel happened, for in her heartbreak, she threw herself to the strongest-looking male she could find among the others there, and did it, with the intention of wanting to forget the rejection, but also curiosity of how it will feel like, for she had planned on doing it with George if he said yes to her confession. In the morning, they found the man dead. The teachers didn't know how to react to this matter. They later passed it off as an accident, for it was just 2 PPL at that age, and couldn't really blame Esther for the death. Cause witnesses came in, for they saw Fidel willingly following Esther to do it. A few weeks after the incident, Esther wouldn't talk to George for a while. If anything, she was ignoring Bro any chance she got. Daina saw this and got concerned of what is going on with the two. She thought they would eventually settle what they were going through, but that wasn't looking to be the case. Daina coming up to George as they were preparing for a mission. Is there a problem between you and Esther that I should be aware of? She's been ignoring you for a good while now. George. I don't think there's a problem, he says. Daina. Come on, George. Stop playing dumb. George, contemplating whether to tell her or not. Fine, I'll tell her, just because I don't want all three of us out of sync during the mission. Daina. I'm all ears. George. Do you remember the night the incident occurred? Daina nods. Well, Esther came to me and well confessed that she liked me. I said no. I didn't really see her that way. Daina. Oh. Realizing something else. Ooh! George. What's the second O for? Daina. No reason to concern herself with that, but Esther never took well not getting what she wanted. But with how she had been looking at you the past 2 years, guess you rejecting her really hurt her. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should be accepted. Love need to go both ways after all. I'll talk to her and see what I can do. With her leaving to go, look for Esther. Moments later, Diana had spoken to Esther. After a few tears shed and a good heart-to-heart, Esther came to George before the mission was about to start. Esther, walking up to George. Hey George, she says to George, with him turning to meet her. George, hi Esther, with them staring at the ground awkwardly, with George breaking the tension. Listen, Esther, you don't have to force herself to say anything you don't want to. Esther, no, she says abruptly, George going quiet. I'm sorry, I just didn't expect to get rejected. Sorry that I have been ignoring you. If anything, I hope we still remain friends. But I'd understand if you didn't want to. As she looks off to the side, George look up at her. George, Esther, don't beat herself over that. Don't worry, I was never mad at you. I just thought you'd never talk to me again. If we can still remain friends and put all that behind us, I'm okay with that. Esther, looking at George, a tear running down her eye. Yeah, I'd like that, so friends, she says, extending an arm at George. George, looking at the hand, as he meets it with his own as they shake. Forever and always. As tears start falling more on Esther's face, with her hiding and trying to wipe the tear with her other arm. Esther, forever and always, she says, fighting back the tears. I gotta go now, she says as she runs off, with her passing Daina on the way, who looks to her, but decides to give her some space, making her way towards George. Diana, looking at George, who had his head down. Don't worry about it, it'll take time, but she'll come around. George, yeah, let's just get ready. It's almost time, he says, for the mission they were assigned to do was to deal with a group of terrorists who were smuggling in weapons, as well as getting involved with a bigger network of terrorists who were involved in human trafficking, taking random espers and superhumans to experiment on drug dealing, weapon smuggling, and many more. For the three, this task was simple: stop the terrorists and bring them in for questioning of who is in charge, and they did so quickly, and this is when it started for Esther. Now having all the terrorists detained and tied up, those with supernatural abilities, in jamming collars, Esther then looks to the terrorist. Esther, still eyeing them. Say, guys, why should we leave these things alive when they are simply going to get prisoned, then later released, just to go out and cause even more trouble? Diana, shocked on hearing the words coming from her friend's mouth. Esther, what are you saying? Esther, extending her arm to the tied, unconscious terrorist, with a fire forming at her palm. I'll simply show you what I'm saying, she says, ready to blast at them, with Diana swiftly coming at her, and redirects her arm upwards, redirecting the wave of fire towards the ceiling, then slaps Esther. Daina, have you lost your mind? Diana says angrily at Esther, with George watching. George, aim with Daina. Our orders were to capture them and bring them in for questioning. Esther, then what? Let's say they disclose of their other accomplices' whereabouts, so we're just going to capture them, only for them to get released back to the world again, she says, with Daina and George looking at her as if they don't even know who she was. I don't think so, she says, with the thugs behind Daina suddenly bursting into flames, with them awaking in cries of agonizing pain. Daina, looking at the burning bodies in horror. Esther, stop this! But her words fell on deaf ears, with Esther intensifying the flames. Esther, if their screams are too much for you, it'll simply speed up their outcome, she says, as the screams go quiet, with George and Daina looking to see Ash, where the terrorists were. George, Esther, what have you done? He says in disbelief. Moments later, they went back to HQ to give their report, as George gave a false report, that the terrorists caused a suicidal explosion, taking themselves out. In order to avoid questioning, George reported this, so as to not explain what Esther had done. A couple of months after that day passed, with Esther feeling a bit of movement in her stomach, and it was a bit bigger. She brought this to Daina. with them finding out Esther was pregnant, with Esther being given time off from many more missions to birth the child. 9 months passed, and it was time to give birth. They performed the C-section successfully, and later in the hospital, Daina and George found Esther with the baby at the edge of the roof. Daina, calm me. Whatever you're thinking, Esther. Slowly back down from there. George, I will take the child off her hands. Just back away from there. Esther, you'll take him, she says, slowly turning around and walking towards the two, and hands the child over to George, then walks away. George holds the boy with the child crying in his arms. It's all right, little one, Esther, who then suddenly stops. Fidel, she says. George, what? Esther, Fidel. That's what the man I slept was called, so it'll be his too, she said coldly as she walked away. Diana, as she comes to the child's side. George, what? Just what is happening with Esther, as she starts crying. George, even I'm not sure. A bit over a year later, the three proved themselves worthy, with them being the first three of the top 10 heroes of the world today. But George humbly declined the offer, due to the child now in his care, and so was given another title as head of USHA, which was led by John, his father figure. He accepted this, where he could look after the child and still fulfill his duties. Diana went on to become the leader of a group of 10, composing the strongest heroes in the world. Fast forward 8 years later, we find 28-year-old Daina and Esther arguing with one another. Daina, you can't keep acting this way. We've grown adults now, yet you and I still fight. When will you stop this? We're on a team now. A team that's not just me and George, where we can simply overlook her ways, so you can't just go out doing whatever you like, and as her leader, you ought to listen to me. Esther, if that's the case, then I don't belong in a team. Daina, I knew you'd say that. That's why I brought a friend. With her moving to open the door of the room they were in, revealing George, and behind him was a child. George, to the kid. Come now, don't be shy. As little Fidel shyly came out from behind him. You see her? That's your mother? Go on, say hi. Don't be shy. But he is reluctant. Come on, sport, do it for me. I'll get you your favorite lunch today if you do. Fidel, okay, he says with a smile, with him slowly walking to Esther, who backs away as he approaches her. Fidel reaches her and smiles at her. Hi, there, Mum. Esther, upon hearing those words, went into panic with an aura of fire shooting out from her body, scaring little Fidel, with George Flash stepping towards Fidel and safely pulls him away as he stands at the door holding the terrified Fidel. George, trying to calm the boy down. Don't worry, you're okay, all right, you're gonna be okay, he says calmly to the shaky young Fidel in his arms, calming the boy down, then gives Esther a disappointed look with her leaving the room in shame. Daina, I'll go after her. George, be careful. Daina went out of the building to find her, only to find her going on a rampage across the city, destroying everything around her. Daina, grabbing her, then jumped up with her, getting her as far away from civilians as possible. Esther! Just what the hell is wrong with you? She screams at her. Esther, something in her, snaps. All right, I'm calm. I'm calm, she says, as Daina slowly released her grip on her, with Esther breaking free from her, pushing off Daina with enough force that sent her crashing down to the surface. Esther then stood on a line of fire, with multiple fires flaring up all around her, as they then turned to become 2-meter-long missiles, with her face doodled on the side, with them dropping onto the entire city, bombing that city. She then came down and started laughing like a maniac. Well, since you can't see my ideals of removing every scum on earth, Daina, you will die alongside them, and for you to bring my own child to scold me. Pathetic. Daina, getting up from the rubble and then looking around to see the entire city, utterly destroyed, the people there having disintegrated to ashes. Daina cried as she gazed upon the sight before her eyes. How could you do this? Answer me, Esther, she yelled out. Esther, looking back to the screams, who are still alive. You brought this upon yourself when you started questioning my methods, Daina. You were killing PPL. Esther, who had a crazed look in her eyes. They didn't deserve to be called people. They were criminals, scum, the bad guys. Who's going to miss 'em, huh? The world would be better without 'em, she says with a smile. Daina, you've gone mad, Esther, as she begins laughing maniacally. I've never been more sane. I've just killed of any of the scum who were hiding within this city. Daina slowly started to walk towards her, her eyes filled with both sorrow and rage. Daina crying. George and Fidel were still in this city, she says, as the words reached Esther's ears. Esther, what? She says in shock, with her going stiff and silent, then a laugh starting coming from her, with it slowly getting louder. Daina looks at her friend, who had now gone mad. Daina, clenching her fist. 30% output, she says with her charging at Esther. Their battle lasted for 7 days and 7 nights, with the entirety of South America being the casualty of this battle. Daina was about ready to kill Esther after this long battle, but got word that both George and Fidel had left the city and later the continent, before they even begun fighting, and on hearing this news, she decided to not do it, and simply go a strength high enough to incapacitate her, winning her the long battle, where she came out with a couple of scratches, cuts, burns and scrapes, with Esther losing an eye, but still, at what cost? For 20% worth of lives were still lost during those days. Millions of heroes, women, men and children lost their lives, and millions more lost their homes and families. It could have been worse for George, before their battle even started, alerted the heroes of what's to come, having them evacuate as many PPL as they could off of the continent of South America, with the Earth coming together chin helping with the evacuation. At the time, the population of South America was 567,456,231 people, and if it wasn't for George's anticipation, all of those lives could have been lost, for they ended up evacuating 80% worth of this population. Esther was later imprisoned in that mountain to rot in there for the rest of her life, with George and Daina responsible for taking her there. But as they kept her in the contraption, she remained silent, neither speaking nor making a sound, with George and Daina walking out of the facility in sorrow. Daina to George as they walk out. I could have killed her, easily stopping her, and saved the lives that were lost, she says, falling to her knees crying. George comforting her. You can't blame herself for that. You were just doing what you thought was best to be done, he says, trying his best to comfort her. During Esther's imprisonment, she spent that time contemplating with herself, fighting with herself, trying to return to herself, to who she actually was, trying to figure out what brought this side of her. Looking back at everything she did, reflecting on it all. But it was hard. It was just hard. It was basically impossible for her to know if she was even in control of herself anymore. Till one day George came to visit her, bringing her the monthly food. She was startled by George's presence, that she couldn't even bring herself to have a conversation with him. George kept coming in every month, bringing her the food, but every time Esther wasn't talking at all. It was like this throughout the first couple of years. For 3 whole years, Esther never uttered a single word. She was always just within the contraption, with this dead look in her eye. Usual self. It took time, but she looked back at everything she had done, reflecting on it. What helped the most was George, who would occasionally come to visit her behind Daina's back to talk to her. Still, in the first couple of years, around the middle months of her 4th year, she became a bit more chatty, now able to return George's greetings, and slowly as the months went by she would open up to George as they chatted away every month from the years. By the 8th year, she showed real significant improvement. The light in her eye had returned. George, you've been locked up in here for a good while now, so what do you say to getting out of here? I'm sure if I put in good word with the world powers, we can get you out and free. Esther, no, she says defensively. Not yet. What if I go back to what I was? She says in a lower tone. George, understanding her decision. All right then, we'll give it a bit more time. But when that time comes, both me and Daina will be waiting, not to mention Fidel. he says with him realizing what he said, and goes quiet. Sorry about that, Esther. What's there to apologize about in the one who left him, remember? They going quiet again. A terrible person, a terrible friend, and worst, a terrible mother. I'm sure he hates me with a passion. I would too, honestly, if I was my child, she says with tears falling down her face. George, trying to find the words to speak. Well, have you gotten to reading that letter I gave you a couple of years ago? It was from Fidel. He still asks me if you've read it yet. With Esther nodding no. Esther. Sorry, I just can't bring myself to open it yet. It's probably him writing down how terrible of a person I am, but that's okay. If he still had enough time to write this for me, it still means something to me, and he'll treasure this letter. As an alarm goes off. George, looking at his watch. Guess our time is up. Esther, don't worry about me, George. You go live a life. George, I will. Both worry about you and live my life. But I'll be back, same time, next month, he says with a light smile to Esther. Esther smiling back at him with George leaving the area, but stops. Just remember, if you ever want somebody to talk to, or to just vent out her problems too, I'll always be there to litsen, he says with a shimmer coming to Esther's eye. Esther, he'll take you up on that offer, she says. End.